Nevada's response to a potential showdown between Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. Plus, should Nevadans pay sales tax on diapers? That's this week on Nevada Week.
Support for Nevada Week is provided by Senator William H. Hernstedt.
Welcome to Nevada Week. I'm Amber Renee Dixon, and if you plan on casting a ballot in Nevada this year, expect to be asked whether Nevadans should pay a sales tax on diapers. The economics behind that ballot question, we'll cover that ahead, but we begin with the 2024 presidential election. President Joe Biden, who's decided to pull out of the race, has endorsed Vice President Kamala Harris to become the Democratic Party's nominee. He announced this on Sunday, and by Monday night, all 49 of Nevada's national delegates followed suit and pledged their support for Harris. Joining us now with her insight into Nevada's response to this major shakeup is Gabby Birenbaum, Washington, D.C. correspondent for the Nevada Independent. Gabby, welcome. Thank you for taking the time. I know you have been very, very busy.
Thank you for having me.
So as far as those Democratic delegates in Nevada, was their support of Harris ever in doubt?
I don't think so. I think from the minute the president, I think it was 6 minutes after he announced he was dropping out, he endorsed the vice president. And from there, all I heard was positivity about the vice president. A lot of the federal delegation, the senators, members of the House, in their initial statements, thanked the president. And then very shortly after, threw their weight behind Harris. They're also all delegates to the convention. Just from checking in with delegates leading up to that Monday night vote, I didn't hear anything but support for Harris, excitement about Harris. And they made that unanimous decision pretty quickly. I think the Nevada Democratic Party likes to, be in the national conversation, and they definitely wanted to make sure that as a battleground state, they made their voice heard for the vice president.
And so what happens next? And then what about a primary? I mean, why isn't that being discussed?
Yeah, I think part of the reason, we had a primary, President Biden didn't have any serious challengers, especially in Nevada, where there was one member of Congress, Dean Phillips, who did run against him. He wasn't on the ballot in Nevada. He didn't get on in time. And so I think a lot of people feel that if the president is going to make the decision to drop out, a vote for Biden in the primary, which he won in Nevada with almost 90% of the vote, was, also a vote of confidence, even though her name wasn't there, in his vice presidential choice in Harris. They've been the Biden-Harris campaign. And so I think there was talk of doing some sort of primary. At this point, it would be too late for voters to weigh in. So it would be delegates to the convention that would have to make that decision. Nevada, has 49 of them. In theory, we could have had an open convention. I think Democrats, and I think from talking to a lot of voters as well, felt like let's move forward united and focused on Donald Trump. And that's what happened. And so the vote that Nevada's delegates had, the 49 of them, and other state parties have had, is just symbolic. Right now, they can't commit to the vice president, but it means they're saying when we go to the convention in a month in August, we plan to vote for the vice president. And at this point, she has enough delegates who have said that to where she would lock up the nomination.
And talking to voters, you came up with the term, or maybe it wasn't you. Did you come up with this term, Harris-mentum? What does it mean?
I don't know. I don't know if I don't know if I saw it somewhere, if I came up with it. I'm not sure. I mean, it's not the most, it's not the biggest linguistic challenge to put those two words together. But yeah, I mean, from talking to Democrats in the weeks between President Biden's debate performance and his decision to drop out, I think there was, even among those who publicly supported him and were sticking by him, there was trepidation, and for good reason, He was losing in the polls to President Trump, former President Trump, particularly in Nevada. He had not led a poll that I saw all cycle, and a lot of those polls were outside the margin of error. You'd see Trump up 4, 5, 6, 7 points, And I think this has just ignited a new energy among Nevada Democrats. The campaign, they woke up as the Biden campaign on Sunday, went to bed as the Harris campaign. They told me that they had 600, they recruited 600 volunteers on Sunday. Typically, they'll do 150. They had people walking in off the street saying, how can we help? What can we do? People who weren't responding to texts from the campaign saying, okay, now I'm ready. What can I do? And I think that bore out in the national data, I mean, she raised a record. I think it was $1 billion in the first 24 hours there. We saw a record number of new voter registrations. So, I mean, I think for Democrats, this is a watershed moment to say they feel they're getting rid of the baggage that President Biden had with age, definitely, but even somewhat, I think, on his liabilities with the economy in particular. It seems that voters don't penalize Harris quite the same way. And so it'll be interesting to see if this is sort of a honeymoon, as Trump's pollster called it, a Harris honeymoon, or if this can be sustained all the way through November. But certainly, I think for the campaign staff on the ground and for volunteers, they're feeling a lot more energized than they had been.
And what about the voting blocks in Nevada that the now Harris campaign hopes to attract that perhaps President Biden wasn't?
Yeah, I think President Biden, you saw his biggest weaknesses were with voters of color and with younger voters. And I think, we don't yet have data, but the campaign is really hopeful that the vice president, who, everyone's talking about how young she is, which she is 59, right? Love that, old young. I think that's great. But compared to, Biden and Trump, who are both seniors, we have someone who's significantly younger, who is a woman of color, who's both Black and South Asian. Those are particularly Black voters in Nevada are pretty well organized, and from what I can tell, quite excited about her candidacy. And then I think you've seen younger voters get really excited. They've been making memes, they've been, posting stuff, and so we'll see how much of this is just an unprecedented event and people, weighing in, and how much of this is real momentum. But the campaign certainly believes she can do better with those voter groups.
All right, Gabby, I hope we're not cringe when we attempt to do this, but actually I'm going to have you do it and tell me, what does it mean when it is said that Kamala is brat?
Okay, so let's start with Brat is an album by the British pop star, actually, Charlie XCX, that came out earlier this year. I would recommend anyone listen to it. It's a lot of fun, just dance pop, but it's kind of funny because a lot of the themes of the album are about, being a party girl, and Charlie XCX herself is actually in her 30s, so I think people maybe misunderstand a bit. Gen Z, definitely. I'm Gen Z. I love this album. But I think the idea, Gen Z's, I think, humor sense tends to go towards the ridiculous. And so people have been making edits of the vice president. She, has a lot of memeable moments over the past 4 years, especially a lot of quotes that people know. So taking those moments of her, saying funny things, putting the Brat music over it. The Brat album cover is sort of lime green, so putting that lime green filter. And I think you've seen the campaign wink and nod to it, definitely. And we'll see how that plays out. And again, we'll see if this is just Gen Z sort of posting ironically, or if this is true enthusiasm. But it's definitely, I think for me and for other young people, it's fun to see.
Yeah, well, and everyone in Gen Z is not of voting age. So that's important to remember. Also, that British pop star, she can't vote in this election, but hey, we'll move on.
She cannot.
The Trump campaign, how did they view Nevada prior to this announcement, prior to Biden dropping out, and how does the campaign view Nevada now?
The Trump campaign was incredibly confident about Nevada. It was a state where I think in some sense there'd been reporting that they'd even taken it off of their battleground map, that they felt like the true battlegrounds were in the Midwest, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, and Michigan, and that Nevada in particular, as well as Arizona and Georgia, were locks for former President Trump. I think, they're going to be digging into the data, especially as new polls come out, and evaluate that. The Harris campaign certainly thinks this is going to, the Biden campaign never said we can't win Nevada, but, they acknowledged in internal memos, our path is through the Midwest, through the Rust Belt. I think the Harris campaign, particularly because she's from California, because she maybe connects more to some of the voters in the Sun Belt, in Nevada and Arizona in particular, that they can, again, be competitive in Nevada. And so I think, it's hard to write off either campaign in July. There's still so much time, but I think the Trump campaign had been really confident, and we'll see if they maintain that confidence. Right now, they don't have much presence in Nevada, and so I think if they feel worried, you'll probably see some campaign offices opening and some staff coming to Nevada.
How has the Nevada GOP responded?
I think their plan is just to attack Harris the same way they've attacked Biden. I think they plan to attack her on inflation. They plan to attack her on immigration. For them, it's a different candidate, but the same message. And we'll see. I mean, there has been discussion of potential, and, because she was the vice president, she can take over the campaign infrastructure, the campaign finance account, all of that. But we'll see if there's some element of legal challenges to her candidacy coming forward.
And that's already, I believe, happening. The Trump campaign asking the FEC to step in. In what regard?
So I think they're concerned about this, campaign was registered to Joe Biden, and can he just transfer that money over to Kamala Harris? Now, most of the campaign finance experts I've seen have said yes, because it's the Biden-Harris campaign account. And that would have been, I think, one of the real risks of Democrats having an open primary, if it had been someone else, they would not likely have been able to take over that campaign account and might have had to start from scratch. So we'll see if the FEC weighs in. But from my understanding, I believe she's on solid legal ground to take that over.
All right. And lastly, Gabby, what are you working on? I know you are busy. Things are changing all the time.
I am trying to just talk to as many people as I can about the vice president. She was the Attorney General of California at the same time our senator in Nevada, Catherine Cortez Masto, was Attorney General. They served in the Senate together. And so I'm trying to, she has a number of people who worked on her 2020 campaign who are in Nevada who are on her staff today. So just trying to understand how she thinks about the state, what her plan is, and if she's, a fan of Vegas, as many people are.
Gabby Birenbaum of the Nevada Independent, thank you for joining Nevada Week.
Thank you.
Now, in addition to voting for the next president of the United States, Nevada voters in November will also be asked whether the state's Sales and Use Tax Act of 1955 should be amended to remove the sales tax on child and adult diapers. One of the measure's main supporters is Kelly Maxwell, CEO and Executive Director of Baby's Bounty. We spoke with her at the nonprofit's newest headquarters, the Baby's Bounty Center for Families near Tropicana and Decatur.
Kelly, let's first talk about your new headquarters, 9,000 square feet compared to 2,500, I think you told me, at the old facility. What was the need for this much space?
Well, our programming has grown nearly 3,000% since COVID, right? So in the last 4 years. So it really, we needed a lot more space. I had folks working in diaper storage rooms. We didn't have nearly enough warehousing space, office space all around. We needed a lot more room. We also needed to build a classroom to expand our educational offerings. So this new space allowed us to do that.
And how quickly did you know you needed to do that? You mentioned the diaper bank program.
Yes.
And so is that the catalyst?
Yeah, when we were just this program you see behind us, this baby bundle program, we were okay in 2,500 square feet. Once we launched the diaper banks and then also our Diapers for Diplomas program, we quickly realized that we were outgrowing our space. We had storage units in Henderson, in North Las Vegas, in Northern Nevada, but we really needed to expand our headquarters.
Diapers take up a lot of space.
They sure do.
While we are on it, though, the bundle that you're talking about, what goes into it? Who gets it?
Yes, so this was our flagship program. It's about 16 years old, this program. It's basically a baby shower in a bag for clients living in poverty. So we are producing now over 100 of these a month, so in excess of 1,200 baby bundles a year to our clients living in poverty. So clients are referred to us by partner agencies, and we distribute these to them. They have a required Safe Sleep and Baby Basics course, and they receive all of the items needed to care for their newborn for the first 6 months of life.
I think you told me it's about $500 worth of supplies.
It is. And critical items that you cannot leave the hospital without a car seat. So there's an infant regulation car seat, brand new portable crib, so for a safe sleep environment, 25 items of clothing, bibs, rattles, baby books, all of the items needed to care for these newborns. These families in poverty don't have these items, and there are children's lives on the other side of that, right? So children are dying from unsafe sleep environments. So we're providing those, and also the education so that they know how to properly sleep their newborn.
Back to the diaper bank program. It was something you launched back in May of 2020 in response to COVID.
Yes.
4 years later, what is the need now compared to the need then?
Well, when you were coming here, I thought the last time we spoke, I had really high hopes that I would solve diaper need in the state of Nevada by 2025. And what we did not count on was inflation and the dramatic impact it had on families and what's affordable for them. So the poorest Americans spend 14% of their take-home pay on diapers, right? So the math just simply doesn't work. Diapers went up 185% in COVID, and that number's not going down. It's not waning at all. So where we used to see 400 or 500 people attend each of our large diaper banks, now we're seeing in excess of 800. So as our population increases and as the inflationary impact has really compounded those stressors for Nevada families, we have seen nothing but week over week increases in our diaper bank attendees.
How do you explain to potential donors, for example, the impact that free diapers can have on a low-income family?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, they're preventative medical supplies, right? So without an adequate supply of diapers and wipes, children, infants are at risk of a whole host of medical problems, right? So from severe diaper rash to viral meningitis. And these children then are going to our emergency rooms and seeking medical care, right? So what we're talking about is preventing additional statewide medical costs. So when diaper banks are properly funded in a state, you see a $3.2 million decrease in statewide medical costs, right? Because we're preventing these illnesses, right? But beyond that, diapers are a critical component of our economy. So without an adequate supply of diapers, these families cannot access daycare. They cannot access school or go back to work. So if we are expecting families to be self-sufficient, but inflation and these exorbitant diaper costs have really impacted that. If we can help in this seemingly small way to get them back on their feet, then they can get back into the workforce.
I'm not sure how many people know, but it is a requirement for many daycares that you provide the diapers for your child.
It is. Even the free and subsidized daycares require that you, they will have some diapers on hand, really emergency supplies. But what you need is 8 to 10 diapers per day to take your child to daycare. That is cost prohibitive for a lot of families. And 1 in 5 families who rely on daycare have called in sick in the last week because they didn't have enough diapers to send their children to daycare.
This November, voters in Nevada will get to vote on ballot question 5, which asks whether a sales tax should be removed from child and adult diapers. The state's Fiscal Analysis Division estimates that it will result in a sales tax revenue loss of about $9.3 million, $2.4 million of which would have gone to the state's general fund had this been implemented in 2023, $2.9 million of which would go to the local schools support tax. So there is the argument this removal of the sales tax would take money away from education. How would you respond to that?
Well, I would say first and foremost, we worked really hard to pass this diaper tax bill, which 16 other states have already done, because diapers should have never been taxed in the first place. They are preventative healthcare supplies. So we don't tax other healthcare items like Band-Aids or Tylenol, right? So the idea behind this is that should have never been taxed as a luxury item in the first place. So we're just getting back to really what common sense. But more than that, attaching a fiscal note to something presumes that the savings from the diaper tax will then not be used to purchase other taxable items. So sales tax is not a zero-sum game. Many of these families will use that savings to purchase other items. Let's say a car seat, some infant clothes, some baby bottles. Those things are taxed, right? So I think those numbers may be a little aggressive, I will say.
Yeah, that would be as if someone took the money they were saving from this sales tax,
right,
put it away and didn't spend it.
Right. And we know that that's not how Nevada families are able to operate right now, particularly in inflation.
And you did mention you had to go through the legislative process to get this even on the ballot. Nobody voted in opposition to it. There was very little opposition except for one woman, I believe, who called in. And she said, in part, quote, "People need to revisit cloth diapers and reusing. If people can't afford the basics for their children, maybe they need to utilize the birth control that we're paying for if you have your way this session." End quote. How would you respond to that?
Well, I want to acknowledge that, yes, we had 6 votes in the Nevada state legislature, and not one legislator on either side of the aisle voted no against this tax, because I think really no matter where you fall on the political spectrum, you can see the benefit to not taxing healthcare supplies. I was present for this caller's testimony, and I think we all feel strongly about personal responsibility. But I think there's some misunderstandings about the way that families are working now. First of all, cloth diapers are not a possibility for a lot of our families. Number one, there's only one daycare in the state of Nevada that will accept your child with cloth diapers, and that's on the campus of UNLV, and there's a 200-person waiting list for that daycare. So if you expect then that self-sufficiency aspect, you can't go back to work if you have cloth diapers. The other thing is families living in poverty don't often have their own washers and dryers. You cannot wash cloth diapers at a laundromat. And if you have 3 or 4 children, cloth diapers are just, really that's not, it's just they're not affordable. They're not practical. And again, you cannot send your child to daycare with them. So we investigated that as an option, as a pilot program here. None of our clients were able to facilitate it. So,
And then the other aspect of her argument, which I imagine you face sometimes, is the attitude that if you can't afford supplies for a baby, then you shouldn't be having children. How do you confront that?
I think we've come up against this for decades, right? So a few things. We're diapering children who are already here, right? These are infants. So whatever poor decisions you think that the parents made or didn't make, first of all, I will acknowledge that maybe they only had poor decisions to make, right? But, and they chose, the best possible option.
What do you mean by that?
I mean, there are women who cannot say no, right? They're in situations where they don't have that opportunity. There are young girls who found themselves in situations that where they didn't have a choice, right? Or they perhaps they even made an irresponsible choice, right? But there are babies on the other side. And so what we're going to do here at Baby's Bounty is drop the judgment, and we're going to take care of the infants who are already here.
I think I interrupted you, but before we were talking about that attitude, and you're taking care of the babies that are already here.
That's it.
Okay.
Right. I don't necessarily think it's productive to go backwards and judge choices that were already made, right? That these children are already here. In terms of people making sound financial decisions, it's much more difficult to do that with inflation, right? Those choices were easier to make 40, 50 years ago when expenses weren't what they were, right? So today we're talking about exorbitant costs to raise a family. We were talking earlier about 30% of take-home pay can go to daycare.
I'm so glad you brought that up, because there's a new report. Tax firm KPMG said that the cost of childcare in the U.S. is rising at nearly double the pace of overall inflation. Right. This is an issue that you are working on with Congressman Stephen Horsford. You met recently. Are there any new ideas that we haven't heard of in terms of addressing the affordability crisis of childcare in Nevada?
Yes. So we're putting together some solutions for a Child Care Solutions Summit coming at the end of the summer. So ahead of that, we met with Deputy Treasury Secretary Wally Adeyemo and Stephen Horsford to really talk about some innovative ideas that are working around the country. So Access Capital is a local organization working to fund home-based childcare opportunities, and it involves home ownership opportunities and working with HOAs to loosen some of the restrictions. There's also, so what we need in Nevada is not just the big box child care solution option. We need movement in a lot of different areas. So in the home-based childcare, that works best for some folks. It's also more affordable, right? And then those large, kind of the name brand childcare facilities, we also need those, and we need tax care credits to pay for those. As I said before, if capitalism could have solved the child care issue, it would have been solved already. But the math doesn't work between the number of children in childcare that you need to actually turn a profit in some of these facilities. So we do need the federal government to come in with some subsidies.
And lastly, I want to talk about diapers for diplomas,
Yes.
another one of your ideas. How did it come about, and what have been the results?
Oh, this is my baby. This is really my favorite program, if I could have one.
More than the diaper bank, because that was yours too.
Yes, I love it so much. I really love what this program is doing to improve not only the lives of the students directly, but also generations, and lifting families out of generational poverty. So how the program works, so first of all, it came out of conversations with our diaper bank clients. So our diaper bank clients would often call and say, I can't come during the diaper bank hours. I'm in school. I'm in nursing school. I'm in high school. I'm in college. I'm in hair school. Could I come after? And I said, yeah, of course, absolutely. We would make these exceptions over and over again. And I started talking to some friends of mine in higher education, and I really wasn't familiar with that space. And I had this idea, what if we offered a different kind of opportunity, more so than just come to our diaper bank and we'll give you a week's supply of diapers? What if we really leaned in to help these parenting college students? So we started with some research and really studied how many students in Nevada in higher ed are parents, and it's 24%. Right?
Wow.
So we're educating an older population here in Nevada, predominantly female. So a lot of them are parents. Started with conversations with initially Nevada State University, and then I was able to get another 4 institutions on board. So now we have UNLV, UNR, Truckee Meadows Community College, CSN, and Nevada State University. And we recently added the Desert Research Institute as well. So what we do is we offer diaper scholarships to parenting college students. And it's a savings of about $1,200 a year per registered child, and we will diaper 3 children per household.
This started in 2023. What have you found the results to be? I know it's not a lot of time to get metrics from, but some.
Yes, we started with 200 diaper scholarships. All 200 were claimed the first year. The metrics are amazing. Not only the anecdotes coming out of the program, but the overall metrics. 94% of the students say that this is helping them to graduate. 24% of these students are studying nursing, and 16% will be teachers. So a total of 40% in the 2 most needed fields in Nevada. And anecdotally, what we're hearing is these students can cut down on work, because parenting students are working, going to school, and parenting, right? So they can cut down on work because they have this diaper relief, right? Additionally, they can use those the savings to take additional credit hours or for other school-related expenses.
Yeah. Kelly Maxwell, Executive Director and CEO of Baby's Bounty. Thank you for joining Nevada Week.
Thank you, Amber.
And thank you for watching. For any of the resources discussed, go to vegaspbs.org/Nevada Week, and I'll see you next week on Nevada Week.